category at fair value through profit or loss held for trading, a rights issue is one of the transactions that you could possibly come across. The procedure with a rights issue is as follows. The company first makes an announcement that they are planning to make a rights issue. Then the rights issue takes place, which means that the rights certificates are issued to existing shareholders. After the issue of the rights certificates, a right now exists with a value separate from the share that gave rise to the right, and this can now trade separately on the securities exchange. Now the shareholder can do one of the following. They can either exercise the right by paying the rights issue price or the exercise price and go and acquire new shares at this price, which is normally lower than market value. They can sell the right to a member of the public who can then obtain shares in the company by exercising the rights, subject to the conditions in the rights issue. Or the shareholder can acquire additional rights from other shareholders. If these rights are not exercised by the shareholder, they will expire normally on a date which is determined in terms of the rights issue agreement. Therefore, in terms of the rights issue, we deal with specific dates and we need to look at the accounting implication at each of these dates. We have the date of the announcement, we have the date of the rights issue, we have the date when the rights are exercised, and we have expiry date. On the date of the announcement, so that is when the company announces that they are going to make a rights issue, the value in the market of the share price reacts, and then it starts trading at a cum rights value, which includes now a value for the right. It's still only one share price trading cum rights. At the date when the rights are issued by the company, this cum rights value applicable on the date when the rights are issued needs to be split between the value only relating to the rights and the ex rights value applicable to the shares. Then, on the date that the rights are exercised by the shareholder, the following happens. First of all, you use your rights that you have available to go and buy new shares. So two things happens on that date. If the entity did not exercise these rights and you reach expiry date, you have to recognize a loss on derecognition of the rights. Rights to ordinary shares are derivative financial instruments. They are first of all already a financial instrument as there is an agreement between two entities. Initially, when they need to be measured, they don't have their own value. You need to derive a value for the rights from an underlying item. In this instance, it will be the share price. The rights are required at no initial investment. You only receive the rights because you are an existing shareholder. You do not have to pay for it. And it is settled at a future date, either by exercising the right or on expiry date. All derivative financial instruments is mandatory in the category at fair value through profit or loss. So in terms of the rights issue, an advantage is given to existing shareholders because they can take up new shares in terms of the rights agreement at less than fair value. The shares, as I mentioned, on the securities exchange will react to this announcement that the company will make a rights issue, as the shares are now worth more in terms of a possible future benefit. Therefore, it's necessary to value the shares formally prior to the rights issue so that the value of the advantage can be determined. Thus, a fair value adjustment is required on the investment in shares prior to taking the rights issue into account, as this value of the rights is now derived from the cum rights value of the shares. To illustrate that, the cum rights value has got two elements. It's still one share price with two components or two elements. That one cum rights value will now have to be split between the value for the rights and the ex rights value only relating to the shares. The investor does not only have shares anymore, it also has now rights to new shares. And this happens at the date when the rights were issued. So this rights is a new financial asset that originates because of the rights issue, and you have to record it separately in its own D account. Because we are in the category at fair value through profit or loss, the initial measurement of the rights will also be at fair value. How do we determine these values? You can either make use of shareholders' equity method or the current market value. Current market value is more accurate. By using the current market value approach, the value of the rights are derived from the market value or the cum rights value of the shares prior to the rights issue. This valuation technique results in the cum rights value being split between the value of the rights and the ex rights value of the shares. So this derived value will then be the fair value of the investment in rights at initial measurement date. What will happen when you now exercise these rights? Two things. First of all, you have to now use the right to go and buy new shares. So the first thing that happens is to de-recognize the rights used. This will be through a debit to the investment in shares account and a credit to investment in rights account. Secondly, you buy new shares, so you will purchase new shares at the exercise price determined in the rights agreement. In this instance, you will eventually debit the investment in shares account as well as you are purchasing new shares, and your credit will be against the bank account. So both for the amount of the rights used and the value of the new shares purchased will end up in the investment in shares account. Because we are in the category at fair value through profit or loss, balances left in these accounts at year end needs to be subsequently measured at fair value. So if there's rights to shares that's not yet been exercised and have not yet expired at year end, you need a fair value adjustment on those rights. At this point, the rights will have their own fair value, which you will use for this fair value adjustment. On the date that the rights expire, you need to write that down to profit or loss in the splokkie as a loss, as you are now losing the benefit and your debit entry needs to go to profit or loss.